Morning, guys. It's Tuesday, April 15th. Happy Tax Day. It's one of my least celebrated U.S. It's not a holiday, but whatever. Grain futures are mixed this morning. May corn futures up 2 at 487. May soybeans down 7 at 1034 and 3/4. May Chicago wheat down 1 1/4 at 546 1/4. May Kansas City wheat down 4.5 at 550 and 3/4. May spring wheat is down a half cent at 604 1/4. We got some overnight news out of China. Let's start there.
So, China has ordered its airlines to halt purchases of jets, parts, and equipment from U.S. company Boeing. Beijing has also asked Chinese carriers to halt all purchases of aircraft related equipment and parts from other U.S. companies as the U.S. China trade war escalates. The news comes just days after China announced retaliatory 125% tariffs on imports from the U.S. French airplane manufacturer Airbus is the most important supplier to China, and the country will still rely on domestically produced Comac planes. Still, hundreds of Boeing planes based in China will require maintenance and repair.
The story here for us, for our crowd, is not necessarily a Boeing story. What the story is that China is digging in its heels with regard to this trade war, and they're not giving in. They have made no real attempt to negotiate. They have just come back over the top with more and additional tariffs, and now this, which is a big deal. So, soybeans are trading lower this morning, and not totally independently lower, but kind of the weak leg of the grain complex. And honestly, I wouldn't be shocked if like somebody was selling soybeans this morning because they saw this story. We know that we rely on China for a lot of soybean demand. China, generally speaking, accounts for 20% ballpark of all demand for soybeans grown in the United States. And the fact that the trade war continues to be kind of sticky with China, whereas it looks like we're making progress or headed toward negotiations with a lot of other countries, this is just not seen as being a friendly factor with regard to really anything that's sent to China. I'm being told just anecdotally that the consumer is going to start to feel the impact of the tariffs here in the next couple months. Everything from autos to electronics, I mean, you name it. Retailers are going to start hiking prices because of the tariff. So it's starting to get a little bit more real here, I think.
U.S. corn planting is slightly behind schedule. Planting was 4% complete through Sunday compared to 2% last week and 5% on average. The trade had expected a number near 6%. The majority of states across the Corn Belt have made planting progress, with the exception of Indiana, Michigan, Ohio, and Wisconsin. Soybean planting was reported at 2% complete nationally versus 2% on average. The trade was anticipating a print near 3%. Progress was noted in Arkansas, Illinois, Iowa, Kentucky, Louisiana, North Carolina, and Tennessee.
Just kind of getting started in the Corn Belt. Some areas are going to have problems. You had this big band that saw a ton of rain over the last couple of weeks from Arkansas through southeast Missouri, through West Tennessee, West Kentucky, into southern Illinois, southern Indiana, into parts of Ohio. If you guys are watching on YouTube and you're in that band, drop us a comment and just let us know how long is it going to be realistically till you're able to get started and get going. I was told that there is a significant, maybe not significant, but there's absolutely some progress going on in Iowa and places out west where it's been a little bit drier. The forecast offers some more rain for some of those same very wet areas over the next 5 days, but mostly dry for the central and western Corn Belt, I would say certainly. And then you've got rains that return during the 5 to 10 day period. So you could see some significant progress over the next 5 days. And then maybe in Iowa, places like that, things slow down. You look at the Dakotas, you look at Minnesota, not a ton of rain there. Nebraska, maybe eastern half's going to see some rain. So, yeah, we're just getting started here. Let's go to winter wheat.
U.S. winter wheat ratings remain strong. As of Sunday, the crop was rated 47% good to excellent nationally versus 46% last week and 44% on average. The rating was consistent with analysts' expectations, but fell below the 55% recorded during the same week last year. 19% of the crop is rated poor to very poor. The crop is 8% headed nationally versus 5% last week and 8% on average. The U.S. spring wheat crop is 7% planted versus 3% last week and 7% on average.
So the winter wheat ratings are kind of like, was that average-ish? I didn't hear what you said.
Yes, it
We're
was.
close to average.
Yes.
Okay, so Kansas is 57% good to excellent. It was down on the week. Your HRW areas, a lot of them fell, like Kansas. Or no, I'm sorry, Kansas was 43% down from 51. So you would think maybe the HRW market would act a little bit better, and it's simply not. Spring wheat planting just getting started. We know acreage there is down.
StoneX has announced its acquisition of RJ O'Brien and Associates for $900 million. RJ O'Brien, one of the largest independent futures brokerage firms in the US, considered several options before agreeing to the sale. StoneX, which trades 18,000 over-the-counter products and 140 currencies across 40 global exchanges, will gain over 75,000 clients through the deal. The company will fund the $900 million purchase with $625 million in cash and 3.5 million shares of its common stock. Additionally, StoneX will assume up to $143 million of RJ O'Brien's outstanding debt. The acquisition is expected to close in the third quarter of this year. StoneX's stock surged by 4.7% on Monday.
These are two of the larger non-bank FCMs. RJO is a little bit larger as of January in terms of customer segregated funds at about 6.2 billion. StoneX had 5.8 billion. I did not include the bank FCMs, which is a totally different animal. So these are mostly the firms that if you're a farmer, maybe you're in the elevator business or commercial business, these are the firms that you're dealing with primarily. I don't know that the consolidation is a great thing. You like to see competition, and there's still some competition out there. Speaking of that, so ADM is number 3, ADMIS. They are supposedly up for sale. They were exploring a sale, so you may see some further consolidation. Perhaps the bigger story is one that we reported on several months ago, that NFA granted CME approval to become an FCM, which presents a lot of problems. And this is something that, this is just my opinion, but this is something that will, I think, first off, result in even greater consolidation. But there's a lot of problems here. There's conflict of interest issues with this. If you're CME and you're also the FCM, you may have some things that you can do and kind of do better versus your competitors. You're going to compromise some fair market practices. You're going to make it. CME is going to do everything they can to be competitive, right? Everything from lower commission rates to favorability. It's going to present some regulatory challenges. Systemic risk is a phrase that was tossed around a lot when this deal was announced. If you get into a crisis type mode, there's just not the checks and balances out there. I think that this is. I don't think it's a good thing, but we haven't really seen the result of this. It's something that's forthcoming. So consolidation in the futures business. To go back to the initial story, if you guys are clearing RJO, all that's going to happen is your account's going to transfer third quarter of this year, I think, at some point in time. So it should not be a big deal for you at all.
If you guys have not checked out our premium content, you sure need to do so. Joe, can you tell our viewers about yesterday's premium video?
Step back and took a look at the grain market's big picture, and the gist of it was this: the grain market's peaked in this most recent cycle in would have been first or second quarter of 2022, I believe. And I'm going to make an argument for the purpose of this video that we bottomed in August of last year. Everything bottomed. Corn bottomed, soybeans bottomed, wheat bottomed in August of last year. We looked at some big picture retracement levels, and I included a PDF download that you should download and print and throw up on your wall and just give yourself some frame of reference. The market's rally, and let's take the optimistic view and say that we do rally at this point. To have some numbers just kind of in your head above the market that you could maybe shoot for in terms of marketing or otherwise might not be a bad thing, because it's good to have some sort of blueprint or roadmap, and that's kind of what these retracement levels are. If you guys want to see that video and the rest of the premium stuff, go to standardgrain.com. You can sign up this morning. This is a $50 per month subscription. You can cancel at any time, no other fee, no other obligation. Nobody will try to sell you anything else. Just a ton of info direct from us. I know you guys are busy. It's that time of year, but you can sign up on your phone. It takes about 30 seconds. We do Apple Pay, Google Pay, Cash App, credit card. Everything that we send is super easy to access on your phone. Give that deal a shot this morning, guys.
The future of Roundup weed killer may be in jeopardy. Bayer, the maker of Roundup, is considering halting production unless it receives legal protection from ongoing and future lawsuits alleging that the weed killer causes cancer. The German company has already paid approximately $10 billion in settlements and is currently facing around 67,000 additional claims. Bayer produces roughly 40% of the world's glyphosate, the active ingredient in Roundup, which is widely used in U.S. agriculture. Over 90% of U.S. corn, soybean, and cotton crops are genetically engineered to tolerate glyphosate-based herbicides. If Bayer does in fact discontinue production, American farmers may have to rely on imported glyphosate from China or turn to alternative, potentially more harmful herbicides.
Yeah, we use a lot of this stuff all over the country. It's basically the map looks like a map of soybean production for the most part, with a couple of exceptions. But in any case, I guess Bayer's just sick of dealing with this. They're sick of dealing with
Mhm.
it. It's probably getting to a point with the lawsuits that it just financially is not making a ton of sense for them anymore. And then you talked about Chinese alternatives. How does that work with the tariffs, assuming that this lasts for a while?
Really bad.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if this is gonna be a this year thing, but maybe it's a next year thing.
Russian wheat prices declined last week. The drop was attributed to improved weather conditions for this season's crop, although analysts warned that conditions remain volatile. Agricultural consulting group Sovicon reported a 7% increase in weekly wheat exports compared to the previous week. The firm also slightly raised its April export forecast to 1.9 million metric tons, although still 62% lower than April 2024. Recent frosts and above normal temperatures could have a negative impact on the wheat crop. However, the Russian prime minister reported that 93% of winter crops are currently in normal condition.
This is why wheat futures, I believe, were down yesterday and maybe this morning. Russia is the global price setter. Their export prices dipped a little bit this week, and that's probably why we're down. It doesn't need to be a whole lot more complicated than that. The story in commodities um, late last week was that the dollar's weak, and that's kind of been one of the stories. It just hasn't impacted the wheat market yet for whatever reason.
U.S. corn shipments were strong last week, surpassing pre report expectations. USDA reported that 72 million bushels of corn were inspected for export during the week ending April 10th. The print was up 13% compared to the previous week and up 34% versus the same week last year. Soybean shipments were reported at 20 million bushels. The print was down 33% from the prior week, but up 22% compared to the same week last year. Wheat shipments surpassed expectations at 22 million bushels. The print was up a whopping 80% from the previous week, but down 2.5% versus the same week last year.
Solid numbers across the board. If you're a corn bull, one of your arguments, maybe your best argument right now, is that USDA is still understating exports, despite the fact that they raised the projection last week, and it could be by as much as 100 million bushels. You could end up with a U.S. corn carryout that's closer to like a 1.3 than the 1.4 and change that's being advertised right now. We need to keep up this pace of sales and shipments. However, soybeans actually not too bad for this time of year. Wheat also not bad either.
USDA reported a flash sale of corn on Monday. U.S. exporters sold 5 million bushels of corn to Japan for delivery during the current marketing year. Accumulated corn sales are up a whopping 25% compared to the same period last year.
It's good that we're selling corn to Japan because we're in the middle of kind of a trade spat with them, and they're our second largest buyer. Mexico's been the largest buyer this year. Japan has been the second largest buyer. Japanese leadership said that they don't plan to make any big concessions, won't rush to meet a deal, but there are negotiations forthcoming. To see them buying corn is a good thing. What did cattle do yesterday?
Cattle futures were higher. Live cattle saw gains ranging from 95 cents to 227, and feeders were a buck 70 to 287 higher. Box beef prices were also higher. Choice was up 141 at 335.63, and select was up 189 at 315.85.
Outside markets quiet this morning relative to what we've seen the last few weeks. The Dow is up 32 points. The S&P is up 10 points. Bonds are off a little bit. U.S. dollars close to flat. Crude oil down 19 cents, and the May WTI at 61.34. Have a great day, guys. We'll be back on Wednesday.